Hello. Welcome to the Joyscape Therapy podcast. This is officially our fourth episode. This is your host, Maryssa McKenzie. And today we're going to be touching on our first day of CalABA. We are coming to you from Long Beach, California. And remember, the Joyscape Therapy podcast is for everyday people talking about everyday behavior. And so I'm super excited to introduce my good friend and my conference buddy for this weekend, Crystal Salinas.
Hey, I'm so excited. I wish everybody could see our merch right now. We are just looking so cool. I feel like the booth area was popping today.
Yes, all the freebies.
Yes, but so this was my very first CalABA. I'm so excited that it was such a great experience for me. I would think that, coming into this field as a new professional, I'm, as you know, a rising BCBA, so not quite there yet. I just finished with my master's program and I'm currently accruing hours. So this next year is going to be just me getting more confident, more knowledgeable in the field, gaining my supervision hours. I have about a year left. So hopefully next time I'm on the podcast, I'll be a BCBA.
Yes.
But yeah, so like Maryssa said, my name is Crystal. I live on the central coast of California. I used to live in the Bay Area. That's actually where we met, I think like 7 years ago now. We've been friends.
Wow.
Maryssa actually started out as my supervisor and kind of has just been that mentor for me. I feel like she has guided me in this field and has really been there to support me and to show me, you are a boss. You can do this. So it's been really great to know you and to also see you grow and to have this podcast. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. We're excited to have you on.
Yay. So let's see. What do you want to know about me? My background?
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned how many years you've been, where you're at now with finishing your master's program. I know you just transitioned to a new position titled Rising BCBA. I love that.
Okay, yes.
But yeah, so kind of just tell us, like the areas you want to focus on and also like, who you are outside of ABA and your day to day.
Okay, let's see. Well, hopefully I'm a little cool. So I have, like I said, 7 years of experience in ABA. I started out as that RBT position, that entry level. Mostly because I graduated with my undergrad in speech pathology, and as a lot of us know it from coming from a speech pathology background, there's not really that entry level position to get into with that. So I took some time off of school, decided to get into ABA, and just went from there. Outside of ABA, let's see. I have been on this journey of like self-discovery lately. I have just really enjoyed getting to know myself, doing a lot of the things that scare me. I started to do salsa and bachata dancing, which is very much out of my comfort zone, but I'll be over there every Friday night trying to learn. I would say doing new workout classes. I live very close to the beach, so when it stops raining, I'm there.
Get your beach therapy.
Get my beach therapy, exactly. Get that cold water plunge going, swimming in the ocean. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to talk about what we've learned from the conference so far.
Yes. But first, I know, so this is my first day, the first official day of the sessions and the speakers. But if you want to share a little bit about yesterday, your experience volunteering, the workshops you went to from yesterday, I'm sure.
Okay, because I got a little head start on the fun. You're right. So I actually, just in case anybody is new or wants to kind of get to know a little bit more about what CalABA is, I think volunteering is a great way to start out. Since this was my first conference, I decided to volunteer. One of the perks being that your whole conference ticket gets reimbursed to you, and you only have to volunteer for a total of 8 hours. So I got to volunteer for the workshop day, and I got to choose which workshops I wanted to attend. So that was really great. I got to scan people in and then just sit through the 3-hour workshop. So it was a win-win. I actually was super excited because, like I mentioned, I'm on that journey to becoming a BCBA. So I got to start. My first workshop of the whole conference was with Miss Donna Miller. Shout out to her. She is from Pass the Big ABA exam, which, if anybody in this field knows, those materials are like gold. A lot of people look at these as really great sources to getting to pass this really big test. So I really liked that workshop. I feel like although I'm not quite ready to sit for that exam, the things that I learned in there, I can take with me until that day. One huge takeaway from that, and what is going to kind of set me up for guiding my studying when it comes time, is just looking at it as being getting these letters, BCBA, to be what they are. What are these letters going to mean once I have them? And what I learned letters meaning BCBA.
Board Certified Behavior
Board
Analyst.
Certified.
My everyday people.
Okay, yes. Board Certified Behavior Analyst. So what is that going to mean once I get those letters? It's really that I am a professional in the field. I know this science. I'm able to talk about this science to everyday people and really know, okay, I know it at a clinical level, but I also can translate this into words that, my caregivers can understand, my stakeholders and the schools, really anybody, right? Teaching those around me every day. Somebody asks me, what did you go to school for? What, field do you work in? And it's much more than, this broad term of I work with children with autism. Like, there's a lot more to this field, and I'm even excited to just keep learning more about it.
So tell us about like the workshop experience, and especially being in like that smaller workshop setting, and experiencing it for the first time. I've actually never been to a workshop for the conference too, so it's a new experience to hear about, just kind of firsthand from you. But like, what was it like to be in that group setting and kind of to be able to like have a voice and it sounded like you were very comfortable to share, and it was a smaller setting, so you got to kind of just like experience that with like the big ABA exam, I mean, I'm sure that could be also a little bit intimidating.
Exactly. So I would say it was at first until it wasn't. I was surrounded by people who were in the exact same position as I was. So that's why I say, like, starting out the conference in that setting was great. It got me to be inspired to know, I'm learning alongside all these people. We got to take a mini mock exam, which was great because it's been a few months since I've been in school. So these questions kind of came, and I'm like, ooh, I need to brush up on these areas of the task list. It was like, okay, I did really like that intimate setting. There was maybe 25, less than that even, in both of the workshops I attended. So you got to really just get that one-on-one time with the speakers who are very knowledgeable in their field that they were presenting on. I would say, so I did pass the big BCBA exam, but I also did a workshop with Central Reach, which is
Central Reach.
Yes, well, we don't all know. We don't talk. Basically, Central Reach is
a data collection like interface that we use. So, also for maybe the parents that are listening, generally, for the most part, you will have maybe, if you're receiving ABA services, it's likely that your therapist or your BCBA is tracking, like skill acquisition or behaviors on some type of technology that leads to like Central Reach catalysts are big ones. We had some really cool merch from Hierasmus is also another one. Or some companies are still using like paper data, or maybe might be using things from like Google Drive or something like that. But yeah, just kind of an interface. But Central Reach is very, very popular within our field. I feel like it's definitely one of the forefront kind of like data collection.
Or well established.
Well established, yeah.
Yes.
So
So anyway, they had a workshop where we just kind of looked at goals that we have for our clients and just broke them down into these very small but attainable goals so that our clients are reaching that reinforcement earlier. If we're teaching them, for example, a very broad goal would be, to bounce a ball. You can't just jump in there. Okay, it seems so easy to teach somebody how to bounce a ball, but there's a lot of steps that kind of go into it. And we created these webs and we got to work with partners during these workshops and just kind of collaborate and talk with the speakers about how they go about doing these things too. So I definitely recommend the workshops. They are extra on top of your regular conference ticket, but that's why I volunteered. I feel like I got that full experience where I got to do the workshops and, give back. I got to meet people and talk, and it was really great. I feel like anybody that's brand new at this, volunteering is a great way to dip your feet in the water wherever,
and save money.
Save money, exactly.
And still be able to get the info, that's so valuable within our field.
Yes.
Another thing too is, so the workshops are often longer, so maybe like
3 hours. There was a 6 hour.
And that's kind of the difference into when we get into the speakers and the sessions is that they're kind of just like hour long, sometimes 50 minutes, but like hour long lectures almost, right? They talk about research and articles, upcoming research, new developing research. So they're different in that respect, right? So it's really cool to hear just some about the activities, the partner work you got to do. So yeah, just kind of to touch on that change and different pace going into today and tomorrow, what we'll see.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that being said, we'll kind of just go into like our day today, since we had a full day of wonderful speakers and just really, really great, rich information.
Yeah.
So the first talk today was by far my favorite. It was the keynote address by Dr. Marlesha Bell. And it was about culturally responsive mentorship and supervision, a faculty and student perspective. So yeah, I don't know, what were your initial thoughts on this? I had mine, but what did you kind of just like? What were some of your takeaways from her talk?
So I'm gonna say first things first was starting out the conference with her talk was amazing. She got up on the stage and was ready to rock it. I loved her confidence, and I think that the topic that she brought today was just an overall arching theme of today's conference, that aspect of cultural diversity within the field and within the professionals. She was talking to the audience as, we know that there are differences amongst practitioners here today, and pointing out that the majority are predominantly white, but she wanted to highlight these minority groups. And what was the acronym that she gave?
She used historically marginalized groups. And that's just basically those identifying as non-white.
Yeah.
And I just loved, like you mentioned, the way she just came out there. And she was confident, and I think I mentioned earlier of like, I love how she kind of sprinkled it. It says, she's coming from a perspective of student and faculty, but I also think of it as a larger, like, she really touched, and I feel like she spoke directly to like different populations of groups, those that identify as white, as non-white, faculty, staff, those in power, and I don't know, I just really appreciated that richness that she brought to the table. And, she touched on a lot of different things. One word we heard a couple of times today was like positionality, of knowing like where we stand in our own like cultural beliefs, even within our own SES, how we identify racially. And so with that being said, like that positionality, barriers to representation and retention within our field, and also just like the supervisory like relationship. She also touched on the difference between like mentorship and kind of broke that down into a few different pieces. And she gave examples, of like understanding who you're interacting with. And I think this goes from also a supervisory relationship as well as even just on overlaps, even if it's not, a master's student to a BCBA or vice versa, even just an assistant manager or Rising BCBA, providing overlapping support for an RBT to understand who you're speaking to, where they come from, your own cultural biases. I think, she just really touched well on some of those things. And she touched on some research that they're doing, some surveys they sent out through the BACB. And just like some of those results, what do students want to see? How do you get a seat at that table? As someone who identifies within the group of like the historically marginalized groups. And knowing how to access resources. I think we found in common, like in a lot of cultures, a lot of students who identify within this HMG group are those that may be caring for children that may need to relocate for for higher education opportunities, who maybe are on financial aid. So she just really touched on keeping those things in mind, but giving a few different like pinpoints of what we should do moving forward, and when we're creating policies and different things that, we should also be culturally aware of, like, are we diverse in are we inclusive, I think is a better word.
Yeah. And I liked her example of it's much more than putting a person of color on their poster to advertise their company, and they think,
it's about action. That's what she had mentioned.
It's about action. It's about inclusion and seeking these opinions from us,
Yes. And so just to kind of wrap up, at least my thoughts on this, again, my favorite speaker topic of today is at the end, she talked about, kind of the results from the survey and what they're working on. And they ended with like they asked students particularly about like how to enhance and create, a more culturally responsive, continuing like supervisor relationship. And they mentioned like students want to see like how to expand in professional networks, breaking down gatekeeping practices, engaging efforts to help uplift, benefit, create community, and how to advance in grad school, and how to create more better environments for retention, right? Responding with compassion and concerns. So just some of those things that she mentioned that I thought were super valuable, and for me very relevant, and something to always kind of keep in mind.
Yeah, I think just to kind of follow up on one important piece that I took away from this too was when it comes to that mentorship piece, sometimes we get people at the RBT level that are just kind of here getting ready to get into this field, and they might be an HMG and they don't really know how to do this. Maybe they're a person who is, brand new at
this big wide world.
They're the first in their family, maybe a first generation student. And I think having that mentor where that mentor is able to put themselves in their shoes and say, here I am to help guide you and to lead you the way that I know how. And it's putting yourself in their perspective,
Yes. No, a great talk. And so kind of going on to our next one, which was also great, it was a panel. And the topic was what the caregiver is looking for in their BCBA.
Yeah.
And it was really great. It was three moms of children. Well, actually now adults.
Adults. They were 25 was like maybe the oldest, something like that.
Yeah. And then there was one stepmom, which I thought was a great, kind of mixture, right? Because it's a different perspective, and it's probably one that those share.
Yeah.
And so, those speakers were Kelly Birmingham, Heid, Judith Ursitti, and Jennifer Lucero. So yeah, kind of let's get into, I know Crystal, this was kind of one of your top ones for today. So if you want to kind of touch on a few things that resonated with you.
Yeah, so I think that the position I'm in, where I'm not quite a BCBA, I'm rising to be one. I think that this topic is really important. Sometimes I don't have children of my own. So when it comes to kind of viewing what is it that the caregiver is kind of expecting from me when I walk through that door. So hearing their perspective on, what they've been through regarding ABA kind of brings me to say, whenever I come to first meet a family, I want to know what their experience was and how can I help? How can I be there to support them in the best way that I'm going to know how? I would say key takeaways from what I got was these parents asking their BCBAs to individualize their programming. Not every family is going to need the same type of supports, but from my experience in the field, I've come from companies and, BCBAs that kind of have that cookie cutter experience for their clients. And hearing these families share their perspective on that is not what we want,
Yeah.
So it's just giving me that idea where it's going to be putting yourself in the caregiver shoes at all times to say, what is this caregiver experiencing outside of ABA? I'm not going to just come in and pretend like I know everything. You don't. There's no way to. So, yes, putting yourself in that caregiver shoes, really trying to understand what they are seeing and how you can help them have the best support system.
Yeah. And another piece too that I loved, just that they were very transparent about, like, they're still living this, it's not like a story of I'm through it, it's like it's done, right? Being a parent is a
lifelong
journey.
Yes.
And you could see that from their honest responses, from them talking about how some of them had to trailblaze, like particularly with some insurance coverage when their children were younger, and really getting access seemed to be an issue initially. But also just at the end, I love they asked kind of final questions of what did your team or your like BCBA do that you thought was super helpful? And then the other one was kind of a critique of like, what did you,
wish your BCBA
would have done better. And so from that, even just being a BCBA, who I know, like I am learning always, right? Like I'm not an expert in parent training, or as they coined it, caregiver collaboration, which I love. Because that's what it is. It's a collaboration. You know what I mean? Your values for your child, your family dynamic. They also touched on understanding that. When we talk about individualizing a program, we also talk about individualizing a treatment package for the family, the way the family is. One of the moms spoke about her household is just her and her son. So it is oftentimes very quiet for the most part. They have their own routine, and it's just them two in the home. And she mentioned, like one of the RBTs or the BCBA didn't fit because she kept giving, like, it sounded like she was giving like a lot of social praise, or she was just very loud in general.
And
and they would kind of give a little a little gestural cue at first, and they tried to work on it. But, just even some of those things, right? It does disrupt the flow of the household, and it seemed to be something the mom, and even the child valued, of like, hey, this isn't really working for us, it's our household, maybe maintaining the aura of like the household, right? And so just something that maybe I wouldn't even think of, it might seem super simple to me, and it's like, oh, it's a little loud. But if it's disruptive to the household, that should definitely be taken into consideration.
Exactly. And maybe it's not a right fit.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just love some of their honesty on those pieces. And you just talked about, like, they seem to have each different children. And also I love their honesty about, like, one of the stepmoms was a BCBA, and, she was talking to her husband at the time, and it was the husband's daughter from another relationship. But, she was telling the husband about, like, not reinforcing a behavior. And the husband was pretty transparent about, like, I'm just tired.
Turn your BCBA hat off
Take your
sometime.
BCBA hat
And we
off.
do need to do that, especially with caregivers who don't think this way. They don't have that BCBA hat on all the time. So again, putting yourself in their shoes.
But then also like understanding the balance too of like, it's okay to be tired because before we're a parent, before we're BCBA, we are human first.
Yeah. And so is the client.
And
the client's human first.
The client, the parents, right? If we're recommending something that's just not gonna work for the family or the parent, and being realistic about expectations, you know, we're gonna have harder days than others. And, you know, some days that behavior might get reinforced because I'm too tired to, you know, maybe maintain that that contingency or whatever it might be. So I really loved this panel too, because I really do that's the kind of message I left from it. It's just also understanding like this is a lifelong journey, and even though they have adult children on the spectrum, their experience is evolving, and so I was really appreciative that they were able to share.
Their experience is evolving, so is our field. So did you notice how they talked about they have older children? So when they were she joked about having to call her regional center and dialing 411 and asking for the regional center. We've come a long way. We still have a long way to go. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, and so kind of moving on to the third one of the day, and this one was with Dr. Naima Bhana, and the topic was servicing diverse families using naturalistic developmental behavioral interventions, also known as NDBIs. And just a tip here, we have a really great BCBA with Joyscape that we really hope will come on, hopefully in a few months or so, to talk about NDBI and kind of just give us more info. So I actually attended this because I want to kind of, you know, get to know a little bit more about NDBI, and it's something we probably naturally do. It has, you know, a little bit of crossover with ESDM, also known as Early Start Denver model. A lot of people, especially around the Bay Area, because Stanford is at the forefront of PRT, pivotal response training. So a lot of parents might have heard about that as well. But yeah, so this talk was a really good one, kind of focusing on ethnically like diverse, cultural humility, cultural sensitivity.
Yeah, so I would say that from her session, the biggest thing that I took away was that aspect of servicing diverse families. Right now at the company I'm currently at, I am one of maybe 2 or 3 Spanish speaking clinicians. So that has been super challenging for me, is stepping into that role of becoming, you know, a bilingual therapist, a bilingual professional. It's a foreign language that I'm trying to learn. And I really liked how she discussed, you know, it's more than just translating this document and translating this, you know, ABA jargon to whatever language that you're trying to communicate to this caregiver. It's actually communicating it in a way that they are going to understand it. And yeah, I definitely am. That's part of my journey, part of that self-discovery. I'm learning as I go, but these talks today just really inspire you to become, you know, this great clinician. So
100%. And, you know, even just speaking on that is Dr. Naima Bhana. She identifies, so she is Indian
and Latina.
And she's Spanish speaking.
Trilingual. Yes, she was awesome.
And she shared that she identifies as Muslim, and she is actually from Panama. So, I mean, I thought it was really cool to even just see like, wow, you know, there's a lot going on there. And again, we talk about positionality. And you know, that kind of, for me, being a word of like, I had to process it a little bit because it had been talked about in a couple of different talks today. But even her just understanding like what what she brings, but also, you know, how it kind of resonated with you with the it's not just about translating services, translating services, but even, you know, understanding what you're trying to communicate, right? And kind of from her perspective, just being aware of who you're speaking to.
Yeah, and what that family dynamic is. You know, what is important to my Mexican heritages might not be important to this family's, even though we share that same cultural background, it looks very different. So I just need to go in and we need to understand, you know, what is important to this family and how do I really like she said, the family is going to tell you what is important to them. You're going to take this ABA language and you're going to repeat it back to them in the way that they asked for your help. You know, you're not going to come at them with this jargony response. You're going to say, hey, you asked me that this is what you are struggling with, and this is how I'm going to help you. And it's going from there, not assigning these these caregivers homework, not giving it, show me how you do it. You know, let's work on it. And, you know, we're here for the benefit of the client always, but these families are there to benefit the client as well. So here we are, full team.
Yes. And one of the big pieces is like the caregiver involvement in the actual interventions, right? And really just embedding that from the start. They also talked about, you know, like part of NDBI is also planning for generalization
right
from
away.
the get-go, you know, across settings, across individuals. And they talk individuals, meaning also just kind of having some cultural consideration for some cultures that involve grandparents, right? Aunts, uncles, and those being possibly primary caregivers for some of the kids as well. So yeah, just some really cool dynamics. And there was kind of just a breakdown that she gave that I just thought was, you know, really important, and she kind of honed it at the end of her talk, was cultural sensitivity versus cultural humility. So just by definition, cultural sensitivity is the awareness of cultural differences and similarities without assigning them a value. So understanding that these are these cultural differences influence our own values, learning, and behavior. So then when we look at cultural humility, that is really the self-exploration and the critique of our own background and that of others, with a willingness to learn from those who are different from us. So yeah, I think they wrapped it in as just honoring, you know, not just our own, but again, being aware of our own biases, values, beliefs, customs, and still respecting, right?
Yeah.
Those who we're interacting with very closely, you know? I mean, if we look at it, NDBIs are often implemented with children who are like 5 or younger, roughly, right? Around that age. And so you really are coming and it's fresh. Maybe the family has been freshly, newly diagnosed.
Yeah.
You know, so they're adjusting as well. So there's a lot of moving pieces, you know, and just approaching that with sensitivity, both culturally and just in general.
Exactly. And you're saying, you know, sometimes families are brand new to this. So you're taking that responsibility. Okay, here I go, teaching you, hoping that you get the best experience, because some families come to you and they maybe didn't have the greatest experience. Maybe they had a BCBA who wasn't willing to understand their values and, you know, the things that are very important to them. And here they go at a second chance. So again, it's just starting out, asking them, what is important to you? I think Dr. Huron today, what did he say? How can I help you?
Yes.
How can I be here to help this family the best
he mentioned
I can?
Like being one of the very first intro, you know, hi, my name is, this is what I do, what, you know, tell me a little bit about you, your son or daughter. And then like in the very beginning of that, you know, being like, okay, great, how can I help you?
Yeah.
Okay, so just kind of wrapping up today, Crystal, I had so much fun just obviously it's always nice to see you and
Yes.
spend time together and catch up. But just to kind of touch on, like, for me, a themed word or kind of takeaway today, and anytime I come to like conferences, is also, I feel like, community. The word community comes up, and maybe even inspiration, because I think that talking about these things in our field, I know we've, really touched on culture, diversity. I think that I love to have this kind of space at these conferences to hear about new and evolving research, but also to just hone in on like what I am passionate about to the core, and thinking about applied behavior analysis as a science. But anytime we think about it as a science, it's also like we are implementing these interventions with people, with families and individuals. And for me, like why I do this work is I want to see change. I love to see change. I love to help others and problem solve and analyze data. So, today my takeaway is like I feel inspired, and I feel like it's really cool. I feel like I have a community with you, especially with just years that we've known each other and seen each other grow. But also just to like even mingle and, just kind of catch up, meet random people where we get lost trying to find the, the room.
In the basement that we went in. There was a room today, man. We thought we weren't going to make it, and it was in the basement.
So, but that's what I kind of take away is just, it's really nice to be around like-minded individuals and to just hear some of these speakers and the research they're talking about, and how I love how they also encourage we should continue the conversation, because that is how we grow as a field, as a people, and we want to see our field do better, and continue to support one another and create safe spaces where we can, dive into these topics, even if they are uncomfortable sometimes. Yeah. What did you feel like you took away, or
So I feel like there should be a word, or there's like this feeling that you get post conference day. Like you are very much inspired. You're surrounded by people who, you're not surrounded by people who love ABA every day, but being in these rooms with people who are so knowledgeable in the field just makes you want to keep learning, from starting out in the workshop to listening to these big panel talks. Like, it's all so inspiring, and it makes me want to just be that much of a better BCBA. I'm striving for this professional title that I'm only going to feel more confident having going to these conferences and continuing my learning experience even after school. It just never stops.
Yes. Oh, so great. Well, thank you everyone for, tuning in today. And again, we're coming to you from CalABA in Long Beach, our first full day of speakers and sessions. And, I also want to thank Crystal Salinas for joining us, the Rising BCBA. So thank you so much for coming and sharing, not just your experience, but your knowledge. And helping us to continue to, open up dialogue about our field and our experiences. It keeps us strong as a field and as a community.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to hear all the upcoming episodes on the Joyscape podcast.
Yes.
So exciting.
Yes, thank you. So that wraps up our 4th episode, and kind of signing out for day 1 of CalABA. Thanks again for tuning in.
Bye.